Summer finally arrived, the one I had been waiting for so long. The snow had melted, the sun was finally shining brighter, and everything around had turned green again. My soul felt alive. There was another reason for my happiness too, the chance to go summer fishing, something I had always loved. For me, fishing had been the passion of a lifetime, ever since childhood, when my father first took me with him. After that, as a kid, I would often run off with my friends to catch fish. Even as an adult, this hobby never lost its charm for me. My name is Greg. I already have my own house, a wife, and a small child. Because of work and family, I didn't always have time for fishing, but one day I finally managed to get everything together and go do what I loved most. I invited my friends, but none of them could make it, so I decided to go alone. I found a new spot online through map searches. It wasn't far from my city, a small river near some village, whose name I don't even remember anymore. Though that doesn't really matter. The important thing was that there was nobody around, just a small forest and the river itself. I marked the place, and when my day off finally came, I woke up early in the morning, gathered all the fishing gear I needed, and loaded into the car. My wife was still asleep, which made sense. It was only 5 in the morning. Quietly closing the front door behind me, I got into the car and headed to my destination. The drive took about an hour, and soon enough I saw the river. Finally arrived. I said to myself as I turned off the engine, stepped out of the car, and inhaled the fresh air, filling my lungs with the scent of nature. My eyes wandered across the landscape, absorbing the calmness of this isolated place. At that moment, time itself seemed to slow down, almost stop. It was so quiet here, even the frogs were croaking. Only the distant singing of birds could be heard somewhere far away. No wind, no rain. Perfect weather to simply relax from the noise of the city. I unpacked my things, settled in, set up my stool, and within 5 minutes cast my fishing rod into the water. About an hour passed, but nothing changed. The fish were biting, and the silence slowly started to lull me to sleep. The lack of the rest was catching up with me. I tried to resist as best as I could, but out of nowhere a crushing exhaustion washed over me, one impossible to fight against. Eventually I closed my eyes. At least that's what it felt like for only a second. I had a strange dream. It was as if I were swimming underwater. There was nothing around me, no fish, no seaweed, not even the riverbed visible below, and I was drifting somewhere aimlessly, without understanding why. My arms and legs moved on their own. This went on for what felt like 15 minutes, until suddenly someone grabbed my leg and started pulling me downward. I struggled upward with all my strength, but it was useless. Something unseen was dragged me into the depths. My gaze was fixed about me, toward the surface, toward my lost chance to come back up. It kept pulling me deeper and deeper until darkness began creeping into my vision. I jolted awake in terror, jerking so hard that I knocked over the bottle of drinking water beside me. Just a dream, I sighed in relief. At the same moment, I noticed the floor twitching in the water. Oh, finally a catch, I thought. I grabbed the rod and started pulling with all my strength. And it was hard, really hard. I had to put in serious effort to reel it in. It honestly felt like someone in the water was holding onto it. What the hell kind of fish is that? I said out loud. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pull the float closer, until suddenly, whatever was on the other end let go. I finally reeled the rod in, only to realize with disappointment that hook was empty. Damn it, it'd go away. I decided to try again. I cast the line once more, threw in some bait, and waited for a miracle. But the miracle never came. No matter how long I sat there, I couldn't catch anything. Still, after watching the river carefully for a while, I began to notice something strange. In different parts of the river, there were strange bubble sounds, almost as if they were coming from beneath the water itself. At first I didn't think much of it. Maybe some kind of fish, who knows. Then around 8 in the evening, small waves began appearing on the surface. Strange, there wasn't even any wind. Where could they be coming from? My thoughts were interrupted by a sound of the car approaching. I turned around and saw another fisherman pulling up near the river. He unloaded his gear and settled down not far from me. I quickly looked him over. He was a man around 35 or 40 years old. Younger than me anyway. He wore an old camouflage jacket, matching pants and rubber boots. After casting his line into the river, he walked over to me. "So, anything biting here?" he asked quietly. "Not really," I replied. "I've been sitting here for about 2 hours, maybe more, and honestly, there is no result at all." "Damn," he said, turning back toward his spot. But he didn't stay there for long. After about half an hour of silence, the man came back again. "Completely dead here," he muttered. I nodded in agreement. "You come here often?" he asked. "No, actually, this is my first time. Found this place on the maps and thought I'd try it out, but honestly, this spot kinda sucks." "Yeah, I heard from some friends there was a river nearby, so I figured I'd come to check it out." I stayed silent for a moment. "What's your name, by the way?" "Greg," I answered. "I'm Richard." We shook hands. After that we somehow got into conversation. Surprisingly, Richard turned out to be a really pleasant guy. Talking to him felt easy, without any discomfort at all. We chatted for probably an hour about fishing, life, random things. Though Richard was extremely talkative, so our dialogue often turned into his monologue, while I just nodded and occasionally muttered, "Yeah" or "yes." Then he pulled out a bottle of vodka. "Maybe we should have a drink for meeting each other," I reacted cautiously to the idea. Drinking with a complete stranger definitely was the best plan. Richard seemed like a decent person, sure, but I barely knew him. No, sorry, I don't drink." "Oh, come on, what kind of fishing trip is it without alcohol?" I just smiled in response. He pulled out a plastic cup and poured himself vodka. Meanwhile, I kept staring at the river and noticed the bubbling sounds were happening more and more often. Something about them bothered me. Sure, I'd seen scenes like that before. Wasn't it happening way too frequently? Richard, meanwhile, wouldn't shut up. It felt like the alcohol had loosened his tongue even more. He started telling me about his kids, about his wife constantly nagging him, about his factory job that he was sick and tired of. Honestly, his stories were starting to wear me out. Besides, it was already obvious that there were probably no fish in this river at all. "Alright, I should probably get going," I finally said, interrupting his endless stream of words. "Odd, leaving already?" he asked sadly. "Yeah, nothing biting here, and I'm tired. I wanna go home." I started carrying my things back to the car, but before I could even reach the trunk, I suddenly heard Richard shouting excitedly, "It's biting! It's biting!" I turned toward him and saw his float jerking wildly. I had never seen anything like it before. It honestly looked like it was about to snap right off. Richard rushed to the rod and started pulling with all his strength, but it was obvious he was losing whatever struggle this was. And then I saw something else. Whatever was beneath the water was pulling Richard toward itself. Something was right. "That's one hell of a fish," Richard shouted excitedly. "Probably some giant pike." But I watched as he moved closer and closer to the water, desperately trying to pull in his catch. Then it happened. Something beneath the surface suddenly yanked to the rod so hard that Richard flew straight into the water, along with it. "You idiot!" I shouted as I ran to help him. "Forget the damn fishing rod, you moron!" But Richard kept getting dragged further beneath the water. I was about to run into the river myself when, a few seconds later, I saw the man suddenly resurface not far from me. "Thank God you are alive." In response, I only heard his terrified scream, followed by the words, "Run! Get out of here!" Then a hand burst out of the water and smashed Richard across the head so hard that he disappeared beneath the surface again. This time, he couldn't come back up. I could see his arm thrashing wildly. I could even hear Muffet screaming underwater. But it didn't last long. A few moments later, the water where my new friend had been turned dark red. "Richard, what the hell was that?" I stood frozen in a shock, unable to say a single word. Then right beside me, something emerged from the water. A face. It looked like some horrifying mix between a human and a wild animal. The sight alone made me collapse onto the ground. The creature stretched out its cold cleft hand and grabbed my leg, trying to drag me into the river. I screamed and begged for help, but there was nobody around. Then it dug its claws straight into my leg, piercing through my rubber boots. This time I screamed from pain. Nearby was Richard's tackle box. I grabbed it by the handle and started smashing the creature across the face with it. Somehow it worked. Its grip loosened, and I managed to break free, crawling desperately toward my car. The pain in my leg was unbearable. I finally reached the vehicle and barely managed to pull myself onto my knees. Then I looked back and nearly screamed again. The scene that had tried to drag me underwater was crumbling out of river. It stood to its full height, blue skin, thin, rotten-looking body, like it had been decomposing for years. Long claws, huge and rather sharp, as I had already learned firsthand, and it was coming toward me. With trembling hands, I opened the car door, climbed inside and slammed the door and windows shut. The creature sprinted toward the car and began smashing against the window. The engine didn't start immediately, but finally roared to life. I slammed my other foot onto the gas pedal, but the scene managed to smash the side window first and slash my left arm with its claws. I screamed again. The pain was indescribable, but the car finally rushed forward, leaving the creature behind. I abandoned all my fishing gear there. To hell with it. My whole body was shaking, blood dripped onto the seat and floor mat. After driving a good distance away from that cursed river, I used the first aid kit to treat my wounds and headed home. I eventually made it back, limping all the way to my apartment. My arm and leg were throbbing with pain. The moment I walked inside, my wife rushed toward me with terrified questions. I was still shaking uncontrollably. I had never trembled from fear like that in my entire life. I asked her for a drink first, then told her everything exactly as it happened. I hid nothing. My wife believes in supernatural, and honestly, I think she believed me immediately. Of course, she burst into tears, and I had to calm her down afterward. The next day she dragged me to the hospital, and after that, to church too, just in case. Later on, I decided to learn more about that place where I had almost died. From the locals in the nearby village, I found out that years ago, a brutal murder had happened there. Some young guy had been drowned in that river because he had apparently become a problem for someone. I don't know the details, but according to local rumors, a creature was born there afterward, something created from the hatred and the soul of the drowned man. And now, it takes revenge on anyone who dares to come near the river. Apparently, there are no fish there anymore either. The locals told me to stay far away from that place. Yeah, thanks, I already figured that out myself. Believing a legend like that wouldn't be impossible. if I hadn't seen that scene with my own eyes. Richard, I'm sorry it ended that way, but I'm grateful that at least I managed to escape.